bail bonds. Now, some housekeeping tips. This webinar is going to be recorded. So everything that you put in the chat is going to be recorded. So just make sure and be conscious of that. All right. If you have questions, we are going to have a Q&A at the end of this. So please type into the chat your questions so we have those ready at the end. Now, I would like to introduce to you our VP of Legal Operations for Firearms Legal Protection and Criminal Defense Attorney, Terry L. Johnson.
Nick, thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to all of you out there who are watching this evening. We enjoy bringing this to you. And I am with a very special guest tonight, Miss Monica Briggers from Detroit Bail Bonds.
Thanks, Terry, for having me. I'm really excited about joining you guys tonight and hopefully giving you some really interesting and information that you definitely would need.
And here's the great thing, Monica's part of our Bail Bonds Network. We'll talk about that in a bit. But first, let's go with the big question. What does a bail bondsman do? And it's okay to say bail bondsman. I mean, it's not bail bondswoman or...
Either one is fine. I'm fine with either one. I've been in the business roughly now for about 10 years. And everyone always wants to know what a bail bondsman does, or bondswoman in this case. And essentially what we do is we ensure that if you are charged with a crime and that the court then gives you a bond, that we assist you and your loved ones with getting you out of jail.
Now, let me ask this question. As you talk about getting people out of jail, nobody, for the most part, goes to sleep and says, okay, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to commit a crime tomorrow, get locked up, and, I got to figure out bail bonds. Most of the time, people really don't know like you said, what you do. But here's a question. If someone is charged with a crime and there's a bond, which means they've got to put up some money to get out, how do they contact you?
Well, we have, we're online, of course. We have a huge attorney network that we use. And then there's some people that, for whatever reason, will refer because they've used our services before. But, the biggest thing is that when a person is arrested and accused of a crime, it's usually at the worst time. Nobody has a bank account that says bail. So now, the family is trying to put together the money to assist with getting the person out of jail. But we're online under Detroit Bail Bonds. And again, we have a huge attorney network that we use. We do referrals. A lot of times we're also listed in the jails. So most people are readily able to find a bail bondsman if they need one.
Right. But here's a bigger question. And as you kind of said, what happens when, something happens and they're in court and they hear this huge number? What's the largest bond you've ever written?
To date, Terry, the largest bond that I would have written that we would be responsible for is $1 million, which means, which means the family would have had to bring us essentially $100,000 to post that person's bond for their release.
$100,000.
Exactly.
But here's the question, though. They're not convicted of a crime. They're just, like you said, and we just talked, they're just accused. So they got to put up, in this case, $100,000 if they are accused of a crime?
Yes. The way the legal system is that if you're charged with a crime, they will arraign you, which basically reads off what you're charged with, set you up for a court date, and give you a bond based on what you're charged with. And in today's society, anybody can say that you did anything. So
right.
Now you've got to basically cut your arm off,
right,
to be able to sometimes afford the bail that's required to be bonded out of jail.
Well, let me ask this. We talk about that, and you and I have known each other for a long time.
Yes, we have.
And one of the things that happens, there's this, I hate to use the term, but I will, conflict.
Yes. Sometimes I already know what you're going to say before you even say it. I already know what you.
But just so our audience understands, what happens if I've got a pile, and I don't even want to use the term a pile of money. Like you said, these things always happen at the worst time, right?
Right.
And when they happen, I've got to sometimes make a choice. Do I give an attorney the money so I can represent you,
Mhm.
or do I give the bail bondsman, the money so they can get out of jail? I mean, what happens in a situation like that? What do you see?
Well, it's funny because a lot of my attorney friends, they always say, well, Monica, you get the money first. And that's because most people want to get out of jail, go back home to their families, go back to work, whatever it is that they've got going on. And when funds are limited, you have to make a conscious decision as to where that money is going to go. Does it go towards my legal fees, or does it go towards getting me home? And a lot of times people are conflicted as to what to do.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, this is probably going to be a question that a lot of people are saying, like, maybe I've got $20,000 in the bank, okay, hypothetically.
Yeah.
But how do I get to that money if I'm locked up? Will the judge or the sheriff let me out of jail to, go and get a check, a cashier's check to bring to you or them? How does that work?
Well, that becomes a problem as well, because there's sometimes a client may be locked up. Okay. They may have, for whatever reason, $1,000 on them. So enough to cover their bond, or enough to add to whatever it is the family has.
Right.
And so they'll say to me, well, Monica, I have $500 in my account, my commissary, but I don't have access.
Now, what's a commissary?
Well, that's basically a pot of money that a defendant can use to either purchase soap, deodorant, maybe for their phone privileges.
Well, wait a minute now. Just so our people out here completely understand, you mean to tell me when I'm in jail, I don't get soap and toothpaste and toothbrush? I got to pay for that?
Yes, you do. You have to pay for that. If there's additional food items that you want to purchase, perhaps if you want to use the phones. Now, a lot of the local jails have what they call as a tablet, so that you're able to email or text your family. That's a cost as well. So there's a lot of monies that are involved sometimes when a person is incarcerated.
That's interesting. I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that. But so this money in the commissary that they have, this again, if they're going to be locked up for a while, they got to make that decision what to do as well, correct?
Yes. I mean, I think that's the hardest part, is when a person is locked up, what is it that I do with the money that I have? And, and it's hard because sometimes I've told, families or mothers or fathers, where they want to give me the money. And I say, well, based on what your son is charged with, it may make more sense to spend that money with an attorney as opposed to giving it to me, because you could get this person out and they're out for, a year until their case is over with, but now they've got to do 30 years because they didn't have proper representation. So that's the push-pull with that as to where the money should definitely go.
And here's another thing I hear, and obviously I know this, but just for the people who are joining us, and again, thank you so very much, and we hope this is very interesting and also educational for you. But let me ask this question. Are there conditions that, I know the court puts conditions on you in terms of things you can and can't do, but do you do that as well as a bonds person? So like, do you make the people check in? What are some of the conditions that bonds people, if there are any, that they put on someone that uses your services?
It's going to vary based on which company you use. Some companies, such as myself, we do require the client to call in on Mondays just to check in and to let us know what's going on with their court date. But that's for a couple different reasons. One is for us to make sure that we're staying on top of what's going on with their case, because one of my jobs as a bondsman is to ensure that you appear to each one of these court dates, and also is to keep you out of jail. You don't want to miss a court date by mistake, especially now in the time with Corona. Sometimes people aren't receiving court dates in a timely manner. So we want to just stay on top of it so you don't miss a court date, so that you're not in a situation where now you have a warrant because you failed to appear. A lot of times the court will impose certain restrictions, but also from state to state, the biggest thing that you have when you're on a bond is that you can't basically leave the state. But outside of that, once we post a bond, we generally don't see the client anymore. It's not like they're coming into our office, once a week. It's not like we're going to their house, checking on them or anything like that. Once they're out, they're usually out. It's just a small maintenance of knowing when their court dates are. and what's going on with their court. Sometimes they have a question that they haven't been able to get answered from the attorney or maybe from the court clerk that we're able to answer, easily for them.
And let me ask this. You mentioned, they missed their court date. Well, what happens if that goes on? I mean, do you do anything? Do you notify the court? What do you do if that happens?
Well, if a defendant misses court, there's several things that can happen. One could be that it's as simple as them calling and saying, "Hey, Monica, I'm sorry I missed my court date today." And we can call the court, have them walk in the same day or the next day, and then the court can continue with the proceeding. It could be something where a person is intentionally missing a court date, where now the court is telling us that they're going to forfeit our money, and then we have to essentially send someone out to look for the defendant to bring them back to court.
Really? So if someone doesn't come to court, you can send someone out? And now let me ask this. If you have to send them out, does that affect their bond in any way, or does that affect your business? How does that work?
It's twofold. It affects my business because I could potentially lose whatever the amount that I have guaranteed to the court. So let's say I posted a $10,000 bond for the defendant and he fails to appear. The court will then can potentially forfeit my $10,000. So it's imperative that we're able to locate the defendant and bring them back to court to alleviate any potential, financial responsibilities to the courts for that defendant.
So that's like we see on TV, like Dog the Bounty Hunter and things like that, right? They're the ones that will go out and how real is that?
Oh, Dwayne is very real. I know Dwayne personally, and I think you might have met him a time or two. It's very real. I mean, we try, and it's the one thing we don't want to have to do, but there are times when we definitely have to send someone out to kick in a door to locate a defendant. For the most part, I would say 95% of the people that I deal with do what they're supposed to do. But then you do have a small percentage of people that, for whatever reason, whether it be, they're looking at doing 10 years and not want to do it, or simply just a knucklehead that thinks they know more than the next person, that does not show up for court.
Yeah. And that's got to be tough on you as well.
It is. I mean, I would definitely say the business itself is rewarding in that I meet tons of people from all walks of life that a lot of times just end up in a bad situation from making a split second decision.
Right.
Everybody that comes to our office is not a bad person. Everybody that's been locked up is not a bad person. So it's rewarding to me because and I'm a people's person. So I like to meet, different people, and I like helping people. It can be difficult because we don't keep regular hours. So it's like we work basically 24 hours a day. If someone calls me at 4:00 in the morning, and if it's something that we possibly can do, we get up and we go. So it
sounds like our attorneys in our network.
Exactly. You know what it's like to get a call in the middle of the night. You have someone that's being detained, and now you've got to go over to the police department and see what's going on. It's the same thing. We do the same. And our clients have to know that we're going to be there for them no matter what time they call. So I've spent a lot of time making sure that I build that reputation for myself and my business, that if you call Detroit Bail Bonds or you call Monica, that we're going to be there.
And let me ask this now. You're part of our bail bonds network, correct?
Yes.
And I saw a smile come on your face, so that's a good thing. How is it when one of our members gets in trouble and you get a phone call from Linda, runs our benefits department? Tell me how that works, and is it easier? Is it the same? What happens?
Well, I'm smiling, Terry, because it is very easy dealing with Linda and your company if it's a situation where one of your clients needs a bondsman. Essentially, what you guys do is you call me and say, "Hey, Larry Brown is locked up in whatever city." And I'd say, "Okay, do you know what his charges are?" "Yes, this is his charge. He's getting arraigned today at 2:00. I'm like, "Okay." Once we find out what the bond is, you put me in contact with his family. We secure the family's signatures on the bond that are going to guarantee his appearance back in court. And then Linda calls me for an invoice and she sends me the money right away. It's great for your clients because, one, they don't have to worry about that potential of coming up with that money. You know, that's the one thing that's a huge relief for someone that's in jail, to know that, okay, it's going to cost me $5,000. I don't have to worry about where that $5,000 is coming. So it's great for them in that sense. We work really close together to make it as seamless as possible for your clients. So, you know, you call me, we do everything to make sure that they're out as quickly as we can get them out.
Yeah, and one of the great things is it's not just you here. You know, as you know, some of you may not know, but, you know, we go to bail bonds conventions every year. We didn't go, obviously, last year due to COVID, but we've got bail bonds folks all across the country, and they are just like Monica. They are very professional. They care, and we screen them the same way that we screen our attorneys, because, again, as Monica said, we want to make sure that you get the best bonds person, the best representation that you can possibly get. You know, and here, let me ask this of you. Now, you talk about this money that people put up right now. What happens if someone wants to pay it themselves? In other words, there's let's say a $200,000 bond, and it's, let's say 10%, so 20,000. What happens if somebody wants to pay that 20,000, like their significant other or a family member says, "Hey, I'm going to write a check to the court for 20,000." How does that work? Do they get all that money back at the end? You're shaking your head. No.
Well, and that's the thing a lot of people misunderstand. Like, whether you go through the court or whether you go through a bondsman, that money you don't get back. You don't get any of it back when you go through a bondsman. If you go through the courts typically will keep 10%. So you're going to be out of some money. And not only that, like
now, you said, no, so I understand. If there's a bond and I give 20,000 cash, I'm not, and you know, my client is exonerated, they're found not guilty. I go to get my bond back, I'm only getting 18,000 back?
Correct. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind is it's not that they're going to write you a check as soon as that case is over. So if you go to court at 12 o'clock and that case is over with, it's still going to be months before you see that money back.
Really?
In most cases, yes, from the courts, because they've got to go through an accounting process as well. So it's not like they're just writing you a check back. So that's one of the things that I tell my clients as well. It's like, you know, you have to ask yourself, you know, they ask me, should I pay it myself or should I go through a bondsman? Of course, going through a bondsman in most cases is a lot cheaper. But what I have to tell them is that, can you afford to have the courts hold on to your money for X amount of time? Because it's quite realistic to believe that the courts can hold your money up to 90 days, 6 months. It just depends. I mean, how quickly they can get that check back out to you.
Wow. Now, if I spend money with you as a bonds, you know, as a bonds person, I don't get that back either, but I'm not spending the full 20,000, correct?
And Michigan's a little bit different than other states. So a lot of states are just a 10% state. So let's say the bond is 200,000. You know, we secure the 200, you pay the 10%, which is the 20. That's how it is in most states. So I'm actually guaranteeing the 200,000 and I'm charging you the 20, and that's my fee. So if you put up the 200,000 to the courts, you're still going to lose 20 because that's the 10%. Michigan, we do it a little bit different because we have 10% bonds and then we have cash or surety bonds. And it's a little confusing if I got into that. But,
it is.
but in most cases, no, you don't get the money back from the bondsman because we are giving it to you at a reduced amount as opposed to posting the full bond.
So let me ask this. You know, you talked earlier about someone putting money up, whether it's you, whether it's the client. Can that bond be forfeited? In other words, let's say I do something while I'm out on bond. My conduct, let's say I'm charged with another case. I don't follow the conditions of the court. What happens to my money at that point? Or your money?
As you said, well, it depends. If you put up, let's say you go and you pay $10,000 for your son to get out of jail to the courts, and the bond is forfeited for whatever reason. Your son failed to adhere to his tether restrictions or failed to
tether.
Appear.
That's an ankle monitoring system, right?
Or if he, let's say, as you said, caught another case, and the court will can remand that person and can forfeit the bond, which means you get nothing back. Same with me. If a person, if they fail to appear in court, the court can forfeit my bond, which means I'm now obligated for the full amount.
Is that 200,000?
That's 200,000. Yes.
Wow. So you have a huge interest to make sure that whoever you're bonding out gets to court.
Exactly, which is why we do the check-ins, just to make sure that we're clear as to what day they go to court, to see who they have as an attorney.
Does that matter?
Of course.
Why is that?
Because some attorneys are better than others.
So you actually, so if you know the reputation of the attorney, you feel a lot more comfortable and confident securing the bond.
Most definitely. And that's another great thing about you guys. You guys have a really good referral base of your attorneys. The people that you use, the attorneys that you use, are of the best quality in most cases that I've seen, especially in the local area. I know those attorneys personally in most cases, and they're excellent attorneys.
Right.
So, they definitely get a really good product here because, you guys take care of the bond. You also help facilitate with the attorneys, and they're not getting, the bottom of the barrel as far as an attorney is concerned. They're getting some of the best, if not the best, in the legal field, especially here in Michigan.
Absolutely. And we do that all across the country. I'm going to do one other question, and then let me ask this, and I want to offer the people who are with us some things. But I hear a lot of people want to put up things other than money. So let's say I've got a car, a house, a fancy watch. I mean, how does that work? Is that all TV? How does that work?
That's mostly TV series. I mean, there are times when we will ask for a home to secure a bond in addition to whatever the monies are. It just kind of depends, but you can't come into my office and say, hey, I've got this nice Rolex. Let me have that as my $5,000 fee, because I don't make, it is a business. And so I have to be able to pay employees and what have you. So I'm looking to make money so that I can continue to run the business. A watch is not going to allow me to do that.
I understand. Well, listen, we're gonna, before we take some questions online, there's a few things I want to say to the people who are watching. Again, thank you for being part of this. We really appreciate it. We want to do more of these types of webinars for you so that you'll come back and really appreciate the things that we do here at Firearms Legal Protection. As Monica has mentioned, one of the great things that we do, especially if you have a premium package, which covers you in all 50 states, or a family package, again, that covers you in all 50 states, you get bail bonds with that. And you get bail bonds up to $250,000. So if you were in a situation where you had to use a legal weapon to defend yourself or others, you pick up the 800 number, on the back of your membership card, you call us, an attorney answers that. And once that attorney answers, guess what? Not only do we dispatch great attorneys, as Monica said, but we also, if you're part of the premium packages, will also take care of your bond. And you don't want to be waiting around. And again, if you want to take a look at these packages, right above me here, it says click here to join, the red button, just thinking of Men in Black, push the red button, right? This shows you the packages that we have. Again, individual basic covers you in your home state, and that's all attorney fees. You don't have to worry about anything. The great thing about that's the main thing you need is attorney's fees, but there's a lot more to this whole system than just the attorneys, because again, as Monica has gone over this tonight, the bail portion is huge. You don't want to have that conflict that we talked about earlier. Do I pay an attorney? Do I pay the bail bondsman? What about some of the things like the commissary that she talked about? She talked about, the electronic monitoring system. We call them tethers here in Michigan that goes around your ankle. How do I pay for that? Again, Firearms Legal Protection takes care of not only your attorney's fees, uncapped. Again, think about that. You never have to worry about your attorney being paid. And we're going to take care of Monica here and any other bail bondsman in our network up to $250,000. So that's phenomenal. And again, you're covered in all 50 states. And the other great part about Firearms Legal Protection is the professionalism that we have. We not only pick our attorneys and vet our attorneys, but we vet every single solitary bail bonds person that's in our network and anybody else that we do business before they get to you. So that way, if you ever need us, we're going to be here for you. And you know our motto, protect yourself, we'll protect you. So again, hit that red button. If you're not a member, sign up this evening. We'd love to have you part of the FLP family. Let's take a few questions. Nick, do you have a few online that you'd like to read? Because we don't want to ignore the folks who are watching and chiming in. Did I lose Nick?
Nope, I'm here. Just had to unmute myself. I am going to leave my camera off, though, because you guys get to be the center of attention. And
It's okay, Nick. You've got a face for radio. Put your face up. You're just kidding on that, Nick.
All right. So question number 1. Do I get my money back when everything is over?
Well, I think we've kind of gone through that, but you know, the answer to that surprisingly is no. Now, again, with firearms legal protection, you don't have to worry about putting any money up other than your, monthly or annual fee.
Okay. I'm going to take some questions from the audience here. What is the difference between a surety bond and between a bond and a surety bond?
They're essentially the same thing. A surety bond, surety is what a bonding company is. We're backed by an insurance company, so we're guaranteeing to the court that this bond is going to be paid, regardless if we can pay it if this person fails to appear. If we can't pay it for whatever reason, if the person fails to appear, the insurance company is guaranteeing that money to the court. So that's why it's a surety. But they're essentially the same thing.
Great question.
I have a question from Norman. He asks, does a commissary accept credit cards?
Depends on which jail it is. A lot of them do accept credit cards. It just depends on where you're being detained.
And I can tell you the interesting part about that. It's not like the old days where jail is free. As Monica mentioned earlier, your soap, your toothpaste, though it costs you to be in jail. And the only thing I think is free is the bed and the bars, right?
That's Terry's jokes.
All right. Tony asks, can you talk a bit about the relationship between a bail bondsman and bounty hunters?
The bounty hunting portion is it's an important part of our business. I myself personally am not going out chasing any of my clients that have failed to appear. Keep in mind, I have a small percentage that don't show up to court. But when I do have those, I'm not personally going out to look for people because it could be potentially a dangerous situation. You just never know what you're going to walk into. So we want to make sure that we have competent bounty hunters to go out and hunt these people down. It's an interesting job. I've been on runs before with them just to see how everything works, but it can be dangerous as well. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your bounty hunter as a part of your business, because the other thing is if they don't find this person, then now I have to pay the financial obligation to the court. So it's important to have a strong team that's, able to actually locate these people to reduce the amount of money that you have to actually come out of your pocket when a person fails to appear.
And I can tell you, again, depending upon the state you're in, I think it's 56 days here in Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan, they will allow you to go to court before a judge to ask for extended time to locate the person, but it's not that way everywhere.
Right.
I'm fortunate enough to not only write bonds in Michigan, but I kind of write throughout the United States as long as they accept bondsmen. In a state like Arizona, in particular, Maricopa County, it's an automatic forfeit. I don't have time to locate a defendant. If he fails to appear,
it's done right then.
It's done right there. So It depends. It's a state by state situation.
And we've got great people in Arizona as well. If any of our members from Arizona or any of those of you with the premium package end up in Arizona, we've got great folks out there.
So Jason asks, I think we've already answered this, But Jason asks, if you use a bail bondsman and are cleared, do you get your money that you put up back?
Again, it depends. If you were to pay the money directly to the court yourself and not use a bondsman, you would get back everything minus 10%. So if you put up $10,000, you're getting $9,000 back. The issue becomes, how long does it take for you to receive that money? The good thing about the program that we have here is that you have absolutely no money to come out of your pocket at all. So whether you get it back or not doesn't become a factor because you never had to put anything up as far as your own money towards the bond.
That's good. That's good. Okay, got a question from Mark. He's asking, when an individual is out on bail bond, is an ankle bracelet always required?
No. Depends on the charge. There's a couple different things that go into place there. Depends on the judge. Some judges just want everybody on an ankle monitor. Depends on the court. That may be something that they require for the court. It depends on the charge. The charge may require a person to be monitored because maybe they don't want them in a certain area around a certain person. It just depends, but it's not always a requirement as far as your release is concerned.
Well, and let me ask you a question on that. Following up on the question there, you said in certain areas, so that monitor can it tells the court or someone where you are. Will it tell you where you can't go and things like that?
Well, it won't tell you where you can't go because you should know that from your tether officer what areas they require you not to go into, but it will indicate to the officer that you were in an area that you weren't supposed to be. So you may be in a zone that you're not supposed to be in and be surprised the next morning you got the sheriff's at your house to arrest you for violating your tether restrictions. Tether is usually GPS, so a lot of people will ask, do you need a landline? In most cases, no. It works just like a cell phone. They can talk to you through the GPS in most cases.
Wait a minute, I'm sorry to interrupt. So they can actually communicate with you through the monitor?
Yes, through the ankle
monitor. Really?
Yes.
So that could potentially be embarrassing if you're out somewhere and they just decide to start talking to you at, because not everybody knows what you've got on.
It's a nice piece of ankle jewelry is what I like to call it. The thing about it is, a lot of times, depending on where you are, a judge can give you an option to either go on a GPS tether or to go on a bond. If it's a situation where your money may not be, exactly where you need to be to post bond. I tell anybody, if you can afford to take, the option of doing a bond, that's what you want to do, because you don't want to have the court telling you what time to be home, where to go. You don't necessarily want the court to know everywhere that you've been. So, again, you have to understand these people that are charged with a crime, it's an alleged crime. No one's been convicted. They're still innocent until proven guilty. Sometimes we feel that the tether is like a pretrial incarceration, basically incarcerating you by means of tether before the case has ever been resolved. So, tether is a sticky situation, but every case does not require it. But, a lot of judges anymore are imposing it.
Okay, that's good. I've got a question from Linda. She's asking, after I'm out on a bond, can my bond be raised? And if so, what happens?
Yes, your bond can be raised, depending on, if they go through what's called here a probable cause or an exam. Once the information is presented to the judge, they may deem that, the crime requires a larger bond amount. You could essentially catch another case and they feel that you're a threat to society and raise your bond. In my case, now everybody's different, but I can only speak for myself. And I'm not sure exactly how this would work with the legal protection aspect of it, but let's say you have a $10,000 bond and they've now raised it to $20,000. I give my clients the credit for the first $1,000 that they've paid, which means they would only have to come up with another $1,000 to, total the $2,000 that would be required to post that bond. But that's just me speaking. I can't say what another bonding company would or would not do.
Question here.
What other questions do you have for us, Nick?
Of course. Can a bail bondsman take me to jail?
Yes.
Have you ever taken anyone to jail?
Yes.
You say it just like, yes, like I've done that.
You know, that's the one thing I don't want to do. Like, once I post a bond for someone, like I said, my job is to guarantee your appearance back in court. That's the purpose of bail, is to ensure that a person returns back to court. But, you know, like I said, you have to check in with me. If you're not checking in, if the person that has signed for your bond is now saying they no longer want to be responsible for that bond, you know, legally here in this particular state, if your mother calls and says, I no longer want to be on the bond, I have to pick you up and take you back, because she no longer wants to hold that obligation as far as the liability is concerned if he doesn't go back to court.
Well, let me follow up on that. So, as a parent or a you know, significant other or something along those lines of someone, if I sign, what am I signing for them?
Okay, so the way the bail process works, we have a co-signer or an indemnitor, as we call it. And what that person is doing is they're guaranteeing that person's appearance in court. So as I talked before about if a person failed to appear, the court would forfeit my money. And then I would be obligated to make sure that that court is made whole for the bond that I promised in regards to the defendant. So if the person fails to appear, I've got to pay the money. So now what I do, Terry, is I go after the person that actually signed to get that money back from them.
Oh, so it's like a co-signer in a sense on like a car or
Exactly.
something. So if I call and say, you know what, I don't want to be bothered anymore. I'm a little suspect that this person isn't going to do what they want to do, and I don't want to lose my money. I can call you and
yes, and we have you fill out some paperwork so that we can prove to the court, in fact, that, you know, you did say you no longer wanted to be, you know, responsible. We pick you up and we take you back to the jail that we initially bonded you from.
Wow. That's very interesting. Nick, I think we got time for a couple more.
Okay, good. I think, ooh, never mind. Of course, after you say that, the chat blows up, right?
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
We'll spend a little time answering some questions. That's what we're here for, to educate folks about this process.
So Tony's asking, is there ever a time that a family member or the bail bondsman would go to jail if the family member or client did not show up for court?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
Sure. Is there ever a time where a family member would have to, go to jail for them for the other family member not showing up in court?
No, the family member's obligation is a financial obligation. It has nothing to do with the crime being broken or anything like that where they would end up in jail. It's just a financial obligation that they have when they signing the paperwork to be a co-signer on a bond.
Okay. Tony's also asking, what happens if you can't come up with the 10% for your bond?
That's where, you know, if you don't come up with it, 9 times out of 10, you're still there unless the case has gone on for a while. Sometimes what happens if you're in jail for, you know, a couple weeks, a couple months, the judge may be, you know, remiss to give you a personal bond, but you're
and
there.
What's a personal bond?
So personal bond essentially is that it's called your on your own recognizance. So you're promising the court that you're going to show back up.
Just on your word.
Just on your word. And the court is not requiring you to pay any money. But if you have an actual bond that needs to be posted and you have no money to post it, you will be in jail until you're either able to make bail or the case is, you know, resolved.
Okay. Christy has a question. She wants to know, how long does it take to get out of jail once a bail has been paid?
That's going to vary on each jail. Some jails, it's a very quick process. Some jails, it's a tedious and long process. For instance, Miami, Florida, it's 24 hours after you post a bond before somebody is released. You've got smaller jails where it's 10 minutes after you post a bond. So it's going to vary based on location.
Okay. Now, this next question might be a little bit more regional, but Brian's asking this no cash bail. Explain the concept of no cash bail that is starting to make its way into some jurisdictions.
So I'll start and I'll get Monica's opinion on this. You know, what that basically is a thought or a process where you don't have to put any money up. In other words, you show up to court and you say, yep, I'm here, I'll be back. They get some information, you leave. You've put no money up, you've done nothing, you have really no incentive whatsoever to show back up to jail. To show back up to court, to basically defend yourself against the charges that are before you. As a result of that, you have a lot of what I'll call career criminals who will now continue to break the law, go in front of the judge, get a personal bond or no cash, whatever. They get out and they go do the same thing again. But I'd love to hear Monica's take on this, because that could potentially destroy the bail bond system as we know it today.
It's possible. I mean, we hear about it and they've been talking about it for a long time. But here's my take on that. Bail is for appearance. That is the central purpose of bail, is appearance only. So when you take away a person's incentive, as Terry has said, to come back to court, 9 times out of 10, they don't. I mean, you've got, when you've got somebody's mom, dad, wife involved in this as a signer, that person's got a lot to lose. So they're going to make sure that person goes back to court. The other thing with no cash bail is that it's expensive. Each district court has to have a pretrial services to be able to institute that. And we as a taxpayer now will have to shelter that cost. Bail bondsmen cost you nothing, because it's on us to locate these people and to bring them back to court. Also, as Terry mentioned, there's states that have tried it and have actually decided, no, we need to repeal those laws, because what happens is once career criminals find out that they're going to basically get out the next day, they go out and they do the same thing over and over and over. So I can break into your house today, which is Thursday, get out on Friday and come back and break in your house on Saturday, get out Sunday. It just becomes a repeat, cycle. And then you have the victims involved. You shouldn't have to be victimized all over again because you're worried about your assailant coming back to attack you again. There's so many different things that go with that. And I think what has happened in Illinois, in fact, they just signed it into law. You've got every police agency that is in an uproar because you're making the job almost impossible to do. You're out here every day putting your life on the line to make sure that the communities are safe, and they turn around and put the same people back on the streets. I'm not saying that they shouldn't change some parts of bail. I don't feel like if you fail to appear or you don't have a driver's license or insurance that you should be sitting in jail. But if you shoot someone, if you
not in self-defense,
right? If you break into someone's home, if you steal a car, that does not warrant someone having some responsibility for that.
And that's the thing. And you mentioned like Illinois, and there are a few states that are that don't have bondsmen. Mm-hmm. How does that work in a state that does not have licensed bondsmen?
It's up to the family to pay and secure that bail. If it's a state that does not accept bondsmen, then you've got to come up with that money yourself. And that's what happened in a state like Illinois, Kentucky. There's a few that are that way that don't accept bondsmen, but they put it on the actual person to pay the bond.
So it makes it even tougher for the family to
secure a bond. Yes, because as I said before, typically when a person finds themselves in jail, it's at the worst time. Like, no one has a bank account that says bail on it.
Right.
So now they're trying to figure out where they're going to come, with the money to be able to bond their loved one out.
Outstanding. Well, I'll tell you what, we may have time for one more question, and we're going to take that one, and we'll wrap up shortly. Nick?
Okay. So the question is from Ty. Is FLP the co-signer when they pay the bail bondsman?
Great question. FLP is not the co-signer. FLP takes care of the bond itself, the premium on the bond. So what we do is, if you're a member and you've got one of our premium plans, we'd call someone like Monica. She said she's going to be up at, if it's 2 a.m, the attorneys are there, and you've gone before a judge. Now it's 4:30. We need Monica. Monica's going to be there, and we cut the check right to Monica. As far as co-signing and things along those lines, you still need family members or other folks to help you out in terms of not financially, but more importantly, just for your to locate you, whereabouts, things along those lines. We take the pressure off of you by basically putting that up. Would you agree with that, Monica?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is, it's like, I dealt with Terry not too long ago, and one of his clients, and called me and said, Monica, the bond is $50,000. I was like, okay, Terry, is $5,000. I said, have his family get in contact with me so that we can make sure we have an adequate signer to guarantee his appearance back in court, which was done very quickly. I would say in 10 minutes, I was getting a call from, his fiance. We completed the paperwork. Before the end of the day, I had my money from Linda, even though I'm never worried about that because they always make sure that that's taken care of. But the money came very quickly. I was able to get in contact with a family member very quickly. I was aware of who his attorney was immediately.
One of our attorneys.
Yes, I was aware of who you guys had provided an attorney for him. And then, basically he was out of jail, I would say, within, 3 or 4 hours. And the 3 or 4 hours isn't on me. That's from the jail taking, time for release. But the actual process of getting him prepared to be bonded was less than an hour.
And let me ask this as we wrap up. What is it normally without FLP? How long would it take if somebody just called and said, my loved one's in jail and it's a $50,000 bond? How long would that take?
They've got to get the money first. So sometimes that's right away. Sometimes that's the next day or the day after. They've got to figure out who's signing. There's a lot of other things that take place. Like it can be anywhere as quick as an hour, as we did there. But in most cases, most people have to get things together to be able to post them on. Where in this case, the money portion out of it is taken out of it. So in most cases, that's people's, that's the thing that is most cumbersome for people. So when that part of it is taken out, it's just mainly now at this point, just get in contact with the family and, securing signatures for that. But I mean, I couldn't, when you first talked to me about this program, I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but it's been great. I mean, it's one of the easiest things that I've been introduced to as far as, providing protection to your clients. And I don't see how anybody could not actually have this if they're a gun holder.
Well, thank you. And I fully agree with that. Let me just say this before I turn it back to Nick. First of all, I want to say thank you, Monica, for joining us tonight, being a part of our firearms legal protection family and handling our members, not only here in Michigan, but in some cases it's been across the country. Thank you.
No, I want to say, let me just interrupt you real quick. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of this process and to work, as a partner with you guys, because it's been very beneficial for me as well. I've met some additional attorneys from you guys' network, which has been good as well. And I can't say enough. I just believe it's something that you got to have. If this is something that you'd rather have and not need it than need it and not have it. So I would strongly encourage everyone, if they can, to participate in this program.
Thank you very much. I don't think I need to say anything with that other than click that red button above me, get protected. Thank you all for joining us tonight. And again, we'll be back with more seminars along these lines. Monica, thank you. Nick, thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to you for any last comments.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Monica, for joining us. Thank you, Terry. You're always great on camera. For those of you that have typed questions in the comments and those that we have not been able to answer, we are writing those down and we will get answers back to you. This is also a great way for us to know what kind of content to come up with. So before we end this webinar, if you have a quick question or if there's certain content that you would like us to create for you, please share that there.
And Nick, let me just say one thing. I'm just kind of glancing at one question here. Someone asked, if you're in a state that doesn't have a bail bondsman, does FLP cover you? Yes, we do. we have that process worked out. So be rest assured, if you've got our premium package, wherever you are, we will have somebody there to take care of you. And thanks again. And you folks have a phenomenal night. And thanks again for being part of the FLP family.
Great. Good night, everybody.